Good morning. I hope you're having a great day. Make sure you grab the notes from the board, from the table under the board, I guess. They're a half sheet of paper, so obviously you're not going to be able to fit everything on them. That's why I suggested a piece of paper as well. And we'll go over a couple of things that were missed on the quiz. Also note that the homework is written on the chalkboard. I'll mention it again at the end of class. The last thing is you should have 2 quiz correction papers. There should be one here, and there should be one right here. So you should have 2 of them because you're correcting 2 quizzes, 3.1 to 3.2, and then 3.3 to 3.5. Alright, so we're going to begin because a common mistake on the quiz was adding and subtracting a fraction. Okay, so when you're subtracting a fraction from a whole number like this, which is what was a problem on the quiz, you guys got stuck. Alright, so everyone knows that 2, or every whole number, is invisibly over the number 1. Well, in order to be able to subtract or add a fraction, they need to have the same denominator. So what we need is for this fraction to have a denominator of 8, because we already have 13 over 8 as the second fraction. Alright, so what would I have to multiply by 1 to get 8? That's right, 8. So we need to multiply the top also by 8. So 2 times 8 is 16. Once you have this, you add or subtract the top. So 16 minus 3 is 3. And then you keep the denominator, which would be 8. The second problem you can actually solve in 2 ways. The first one is identical to what we just did. We would need the denominator of the denominator of 1 on the bottom to turn into an 8. Okay, so 1 times 8 is 8. So we would need to do 2 times 8, which is still 16. We do the same thing as before. We add the top. 16 and 13 make 29. Then we keep the bottom. We always see if we can reduce, but on both of these we definitely couldn't. The second option to this problem would be 2 plus 13 over 8 is also known as 2 and 13 over 8. You know that I don't like leaving it as a mixed number. We don't use those in the middle of a problem. So you would change it into an improper fraction. You do that by multiplying the denominator by the whole number, which would be 16, and then adding the numerator. So 16 plus 13 is still 29, and then we keep the denominator of 8. So either way, we would have gotten the same exact answer there. So if you missed that problem, make sure you go back and correct your fraction error. Also, some of you didn't show any work in the standard classes because it was multiple choice, and we always show work in math, so make sure you go back and show work in order to get that credit back. So these are adding and subtracting fractions. Now to our notes. Okay, in the diagram, P is parallel to Q. Angle 1 is supplementary to angle 2. Prove that R is parallel to S using the paragraph proof. So we want to prove that these two are parallel. You cannot say that they have the same slope, because how in the world would you know? You would need to know the rise over the run. We literally know nothing about their slope. Some of you said because they don't intersect. Well, you have no idea if they're slowly getting closer and closer and closer to each other. They could be at a small incline towards each other. Okay, so there were ways that we learned to prove that lines were parallel. There were 4 properties that you learned, and I'm sure once I said that, you remembered exactly, hopefully, which ones they were. Alternate interior angles must be congruent. Okay, alternate interior angles must be congruent. which means alternate exterior angles also must be congruent. Corresponding angles must be congruent. And consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So we needed to prove one of these relationships between lines R and lines S. Well, what two angles are on lines R and line S? That's right, 3 and 1 are on both of the angles. So we need to prove a relationship between these two angles. Well, what relationship would they fall under? Consecutive interior. So we need to prove that they are supplementary. Okay, that is our goal. Prove that angle 1 and 3 are consecutive interior, therefore supplementary. So let's take what they already told us. They said that angles 1 and angles 2 add up and equal 180. Okay, they're supplementary. So let's look at other things. We know that 2 and 3 have a relationship. What do we know about angle 2 and angle 3? They're alternate interior, which makes them congruent. Okay, so that means they are the same measure. If angle 2, let's say, was 40 degrees, we'll make it easy, that means angle 3 is also 40 degrees. Okay, it straight up told us that angles 1 and angles 2 are supplementary. So, if angle 2 was 40 degrees, and we know angle 1 and angle 2 add up to 180, well, what number would angle 1 be? 140. So, what do we notice? We have listed angles 1 and angle 2 relationship, angle 2 and angle 3 relationship. Now, what is the last relationship we have not named? Yep, angle 1 and angle 3, they're consecutive interior. Which means that they are supplementary. Alright, so due to these, really two new things, that is enough information to prove that the two lines are parallel. They already had told us angle 1 and angle 2 were equal to 180, so it's not new information. They literally said it up here. So we had to prove the relationship between 2 and 3, which we could prove because P and Q were already parallel because of those triangles. Then we had to decide how to prove that R and S were parallel. So we used the relationship between 1 and 3 to prove it. To see a problem that says write an equation of a line. Okay, remember that you had 3 steps. Some of you plugged in random things and random formulas. You have 3 steps. Number 1 is to find the slope. Okay, you're going to be given an old line that looks like this, and you need to find the slope of the new line. Well, if it says that fantastic word, parallel, we know parallel slopes are the same. So what you would need to do is identify the slope of the old line, which here we really don't need to do any work. It's negative 1/3. It's negative 1/3 because if we distribute, we would get negative 1/3 x. Okay, and nothing would change that fact. So our old slope is negative 1/3. Well, parallel slopes are the same, so what is our new slope? Negative 1/3. I'll give you a second to catch up on writing. To find the perpendicular slope, you take the old slope, which was negative 1/3. You do the opposite sign. So what is opposite of negative? Positive, which we don't necessarily need to write. And then the reciprocal, so we flip 1/3. So yes, that is 3/1, but we're not dumb, or we're not silly, I should say. We write 3. So the perpendicular slope would be 3. Okay? Then you plug it into the point slope formula. You don't plug anything in for y minus, and you don't plug anything in for x minus. All right, and then the y1, x1 comes from the point they gave us, And then the slope comes from our very first step. And then you want your answer to look like y equals mx plus b. You can pause here if you need to catch up on writing. All right, the next two problems, find the value of x that makes s parallel to t. So if you remember those four relationships we just talked about, all right, in order for these lines, in order for s to be parallel to t, all right, we need to have one of those relationships happen. What relationship do these two angles have together? They are alternate interior angles. Alternate exterior angles, because they're on the outside of your two lines here. All right, alternate exterior angles, what do they have to be? Congruent. So they actually need to be the same measure. So we're going to set them equal. 4x plus 16 equals 7x minus 20. Next, we move the smallest x. What is the smallest x here? Yep, that 4x. Subtract 4x. We'll get 16 equals 3x minus 20. All right, then we need to add 20 to both sides. So 36 equals 3x. No, I ran out of room. I'm going to move it for a second. Divide by 3. What do we get for x? 12. That's our answer. You can always plug it back in to make sure that they equal each other. I always highly suggest that. On the second problem, we got this angle and we got this angle. What relationship do they have together? Yep, they're consecutive interior, which are supplementary. That means they add up and equal 180. So that means 2 times x plus 15 plus 3 x plus 20 equal 180. All right, so we need to distribute first. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 15 is 30. I don't need to distribute anything here. So do I really need those parentheses? Because I'm adding them together. I really don't. I can leave the parentheses alone, get rid of them. So I have 3x plus 20 equals 180. Now I need to keep combining. So 2x and 3x are on the same side. 2x and 3x make 5x. 30 and 20, so I'll cross those out. 30 and 20 make 50 equal 180. Subtract 50 on both sides. So we get 5x. Sorry. Oop. So we get 5x equals 130. Divide by 5. What does x equal? 50. Nope. Wrong thinking there. It's too early in the morning. 5 goes into 13 twice with 3 left over. 5 goes into 36 times, so 26. The last thing we're going to go over is determine which lines, if any, must be parallel. All right, so what you need to do is, if I were you, I would highlight maybe or outline where angles are marked congruent. Okay, these are right angles, so therefore they are congruent. And then look at the intersections that they're on. All right, so this angle is on these two intersections. This angle is on these two intersections. All right, so does F have anything to do with the two angles that are marked congruent? No, absolutely not. So F will not be a part of our answer. Well, what is the only line that would be parallel to F? E. So E can't be a part of our answer either. So what two lines have to be parallel? Yeah, line, we say line G, parallel symbol, line H, and that would be our final answer. The next one is a little harder, but nothing we can't handle. All right, so is there a relationship? Let's look at these two angles first. Is there a relationship between these two angles? No, there's not. So we're not going to prove that those two are parallel. Is there a relationship, however, between these two angles and their intersections? Yeah, they're consecutive interior. Consecutive interior have to be supplementary. Well, what is 90 plus 90? 180. So therefore, this is enough to prove that they are parallel. Again, the only lines that are involved are K, M, and N. K can't be parallel to M or N because they intersect. So the only other two lines that will be parallel could be line M parallel to line N. So that would be our answer for this one. Alright, so standard, your homework is in your student journal. We've already actually done some of these pages last week for review. On 89, you're only doing 3 through 6, and when it says graph, yes, you're graphing. Use Desmos.com. I used it in class. I can show it to you in a second. Honors, you're doing something out of your textbook. But a reminder to every single person. Review sections are graded on Wednesday. Your notebook should be in order. So all of those lessons that we have yet to grade, they need to be graded this Wednesday. Just a reminder for the standard, if you're honors, you can stop here. But if you're standard, you can go to Desmos, and it would say graphing. That's great. Or Desmos.com, the same thing. And there's the graphing calculator. You type in y equals, and then whatever you got. Parallel lines, remember, should not intersect. So they should have the same slope. Okay, same slope. They should never intersect. Perpendicular lines should have the opposite reciprocal, and they should intersect. Okay? I will see you tomorrow.